The rain made Manhattan look like it had been wrapped in cellophane. Lights smeared, sirens softened, the whole city breathing in damp, electric hush. Lauren Parker finished refilling coffees at the corner booth of the Bluebird Diner and rubbed a thumb over the crack in her phone screen, the split that glinted like a scar. Rent due in 9 days. Mom's meds already rationed. Shoes too thin for a winter that hadn't even started yet. She reached for a rag that had skidded beneath the counter and her fingers knocked against something heavy. Not the rubbery give of a dropped wallet, not the hollow clink of a forgotten phone. A rectangle of leather and steel. She dragged it toward her in slow motion. A briefcase, not scuffed, not ordinary. Midnight black with a subtle grain, titanium latches that looked like they were designed to keep secrets. Every instinct said, walk away. Every bill back home said, open it. She slid the case behind the counter and checked the floor. No one looking, no one searching, only the bright clink of forks and the hiss of bacon on the grill. She cleared 2 plates with hands that suddenly didn't feel like her own, set them down, and returned to the shadow under the counter where the case waited like a trapped heartbeat. The latches released with a sound that was too soft for how loud it felt. Inside, bricks of cash banded tight, a phone she didn't recognize, matte, heavy, not store-bought, and a sleek card holder with a single business card. Adrian Cavani. The name hit like a chord struck too hard. She knew that surname from neighborhood whispers and late-night news segments that never quite landed on facts. Real estate, imports, clubs on the West Side. The kind of power that wore suits better than law did. Lauren stared at the money until the edges of the bills blurred. A month of rent, then 3, then no. The thought came, uninvited and ashamed, then left with the same speed. Mom's voice rode the rain from 1,000 miles away. Character is what you do when no one sees you, baby. The mat phone vibrated once. No ringtone, only that low hum, like something alive waking up. Incoming call. Unknown number. The screen showed nothing but a single word. Call. Her throat tightened. She glanced toward the kitchen. Manny was plating omelets with his eternal cigarette behind his ear. Gloria was joking with a cop and a night nurse at the counter. Nobody was paying attention. Lauren answered. Hello? She hated that her voice trembled. Silence on the other end. Not empty, listening. I found a briefcase at the Bluebird, she said. If this belongs to Mr. Cavani, I want to return it. Everything is intact. The voice came quiet and low, a river under ice. Who are you? Lauren Parker. I'm a waitress. I'm on the morning shift and don't touch anything else, the man said. Don't leave. I'll send someone. The line went dead. No please. No thank you. Just control, cold and complete, like a door closing. The diner's bell chimed as a group of soaked construction workers tumbled in, laughter fogging the windows. Lauren swallowed the metallic taste in her mouth and slid the case deeper into the dark, as if shadows could keep it safe. She moved slower. Careful not to look different. Careful not to look like a girl whose life had just turned a corner and didn't know if it bent toward light or a drop. 10 minutes later, the door opened and quiet came with it. 2 men in dark coats stood like punctuation at the threshold, soaking rain into the tile. Behind them, a third man without a coat, as if rain avoided him on instinct. He was taller than the door frame wanted him to be, shoulders cut into a suit the color of a storm. Hair dark, a hint of silver near the temple, jaw unkind to lies, eyes the flat gray of steel cable. Lauren had never met a man who altered a room's oxygen before. He didn't scan the diner, he measured it. The corners, the exits, the people who mattered and those who never would. Then he looked at her, and for a second, the sound in the world dropped, like the needle lifted from a record. Lauren Parker. Not a question. Mr. Cavani, she said, because it felt safer than sir. He approached the counter without hurry, and when he reached her, he set down a leather glove like a calling card. A faint scent of rain and bergamot rose from his suit as if the storm belonged to him. You called, he said. I returned your call, she corrected before fear could catch the words. I found a briefcase. May I? Lauren pulled it from the shadows. His gaze touched the open latches, then the neat stacks of cash. Not surprise, not panic. Calculation. You didn't take anything, he said. No. Why? Because her mother's hands shook when she cut pills in half. Because she'd learned that dignity could survive on very little until it couldn't. Because he'd asked why like a man who had heard every answer and still wanted one more. Because it's not mine, she said. He watched her a beat longer than was comfortable, and something almost like curiosity flickered in those gray eyes. Walk with me, he said. Now. Right now. Mister. Cavani, I'm on shift. She gestured toward the coffee pot as if duty could shield her. He lifted a finger, and one of his men placed a sealed envelope on the counter so fast it felt like magic. For your manager, he said. Your shift is covered. Lauren looked from the envelope to Manny. Manny looked back at the envelope like it was a snake coiled in paper. Go, he said. Take your coffee. Don't forget your umbrella. She didn't have an umbrella. She had a jacket that smelled faintly of hope and detergent. She shrugged into it and took one last look at the life that fit between a grill and a bell. Then she followed the man who changed the air. On the curb, a black car that wasn't just a car. Inside, leather, quiet, the faint hum of money. The city outside ran in silver lines. Inside, time paused. Why keep a case like this unsecured? Lauren asked, because silence made him larger. He tilted his head, not unamused. You assume it was unsecured. So you meant to lose it? Meant, he said, as if tasting the word. No, but I accept loss when it's useful. Useful to whom? You called me, he said. We're here. That's usefulness. He watched the rain. She watched him. The briefcase sat between them like a question with too many answers. The car slid under a canopy, and a doorman opened the door as if the universe had rehearsed this scene for weeks. The building above them was all glass and obedient light. Inside, the elevator rose without buttons, and she saw their reflection. Him portrait sharp, her a soft outline with wet hair and brave hands. On the 40th floor, the doors parted on a space that shouldn't have allowed sound, a hush made of marble and restraint. He led her past art that didn't announce itself, into an office with a window that made the city look like a map he had folded twice and kept in his pocket. He closed the door. The lock sounded expensive. Set it down, he said. She did. Tell me exactly what you did when you found it, he said. Every move, every thought worth saying out loud. She told him. She left nothing out. Not the moment the money felt like an answer and then turned back into a problem. Not the way his name tasted like a story she didn't want to be in. He listened like listening was an investment, a stillness so taut she felt the shape of her own breath. When she finished, his gaze dipped to her hands. Not delicate hands. Hands that carried plates and worry. You have debts, he said. Medical, most likely. Not yours. Lauren blinked. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He lifted the case and turned it toward her. Beneath the cash lay a small velvet box she hadn't noticed. He flipped it open with his thumb. Inside, a thin silver necklace, a locket the size of a coin. A picture might fit there, or a secret. That, he said, doesn't belong to me. She frowned. Then, I wanted to see if you'd find it, he interrupted softly, and in that softness something dangerous moved. Because the person who was supposed to already proved she couldn't. The city shimmered on the glass. The rain ticked. Lauren's voice came smaller than she wanted. What kind of game are you playing with people, Mr. Cavani? He met her eyes like a man used to being the ocean in every conversation. The kind where I decide who I can trust. And the kind where people don't know their pieces on your board? You knew enough to call, he said. Most don't. He closed the velvet box, set it on the desk, and with the same hand slid a second phone across the polished wood toward her. Not Matty, not ominous, just a phone. If you're honest because you're afraid, he said, then fear has a price. If you're honest because you can't stand what you see in the mirror otherwise, that's not a price. That's a spine. Lauren didn't touch the phone. What do you want from me? He leaned back, the rain lighting thin silver lines in his eyes. A favor you don't owe me yet. Her pulse whispered warning into her wrists. What kind of favor? The corners of his mouth didn't move, and yet she felt something like a smile in the room. The kind you can only grant once. The door behind her clicked, the sound of the world deciding. She turned to look, but no one was there. Will you take a truth in trade for your trouble? He asked. Depends on the truth, she said. He nodded as if she'd given the only correct answer. The briefcase wasn't lost, he said. It was left. Her throat went dry. By you. By someone who wants something from me and thinks I don't know it, he said. The case is a message. I needed to see who would carry it. Why me? She hated the plea in that word. Because you picked it up, he said simply, and then, gentler than before, and because you put it down. Outside, a siren stitched a red thread through the rain. Inside, his gaze threaded through her excuses and found the truth. He tapped the second phone once. It lit up with a single contact. Adrian. If you walk out, he said, I don't follow. If you keep that number, you'll only use it when you can't afford to be wrong. Lauren looked at the phone, then at the man whose name sounded like danger and debt and something she couldn't name yet. She didn't reach for it. Keep your case, she said. Keep your games. I have a life. He studied her like a rare weather pattern. Common elements, uncommon shape. For now. The elevator swallowed her and threw her back into the city. Rain met her face like applause she didn't deserve. She walked until the Bluebird's neon reappeared, flickering with the stubbornness of the poor. Behind the counter, Manny closed the drawer too carefully. Everything okay? Lauren glanced at the door, at the window glass where her reflection held steady. I returned what wasn't mine, she said. Manny nodded, slow. They tip. She thought of gray eyes, velvet boxes, and phones that rang with choices. Not in cash. When she finally looked down at her jacket pocket, something cold and precise pressed against her palm. The second phone. She hadn't felt him slip it there. She hadn't felt anything at all. She set it on the counter and stared like it would blink first. It didn't. Neither did she. And yet somewhere between the rain and the glass, a shadow moved. A shape at the far curb watching the diner too long. A presence that didn't belong. The bell above the door jingled harmlessly, but the hair at the base of her neck rose anyway. Who leaves a fortune to test strangers, and who else is watching to see who picks it up? By morning, rumor reached the diner before sunlight did, the kind of rumor that came whispered with pastry orders. A black car on 11th and West 28th, a man with a voice like a blade, a briefcase that turned honest. Lauren kept moving through the Bluebird's aisle like she could outrun names. The second phone lay face down in her apron, a weight she shouldn't carry and couldn't set down. She refilled mugs, slid plates, smiled where she could afford to, and didn't where she couldn't. No one looked at her long enough to guess. The first call came at 9:17 a.m. She didn't answer. The second at 11:04. She didn't answer. The third at 12:51, and this time the phone vibrated the length of the counter, bumped salt into pepper, and forced her hand. She thumbed the green circle like a trigger. Lauren, said the river under ice. She swallowed. You put a phone in my pocket. I gave you a way to not die curious. She looked toward the window. On the sidewalk, a man in a too-new jacket watched his reflection in the glass more than the street. She'd noticed him at 8 now, and then again at 10:30. She'd told herself he liked his own face. What do you want, Mr. Cavani? Breakfast, he said. And to return something that's not mine either. I'm at work. So am I. The line went quiet in a way that made her hear breathing she wished she couldn't. She made herself laugh, and it almost sounded real. We serve eggs all day. Sunny side up, he said, as if discussing treaties. Sourdough, coffee, corner booth. The call ended. He arrived 3 minutes later, not because of the distance, but because of the decision. The black car didn't drop him at the curb. It became part of the curb. When he sat, the diner shifted around him like it had expanded to make room. Manny whispered, You want me to... I've got it, Lauren said. She poured coffee into a cup she would never again use for anyone else. He took it black, simple for a man who was not. When she set the plate down, eggs bright, sourdough honest, he slid a plain envelope under the napkin dispenser like a secret in a church. "For your mother's prescriptions," he said, not loudly, not softly. "A loan, if you prefer the word. A gift, if you insist. I don't want your money." "That's not money," he said. "That's time you can buy back." She didn't touch the envelope. "Why do you care?" He lifted the coffee. The steam rose and the city's hurry slowed. "Because you called me when you could have called no one." She didn't have an answer for a truth she didn't want to admire. He ate without hurry. Lauren refilled coffee that didn't need refilling. The man in the 2 new jacket stepped away from the window and then returned like a tide that forgot what water does. "Do you know him?" she asked, nodding toward the glass. Adrian didn't look. "I know what he is." "What is he?" He finally let his gaze find the window, and the window obeyed. "A messenger, not mine." "For who?" "For someone who mistakes me for a man who can be sent messages instead of answers." She heard the subtle shift in the diner, the way other rooms sensed weather changing. Adrian lifted a single finger, and one of his men materialized from the door jamb like a choice she hadn't noticed. A minute later, the 2 new jacket was gone. The glass held only last year's wreath reflection, and the word breakfast in backwards, peeling gold. "Last night you said that locket wasn't yours," she said. "Correct." "Whose is it?" He cracked toast as if breaking it meant something. "A woman who lied to me. A woman who might lie again. I don't tolerate second lies." "Then why keep it?" "To remember the cost of first ones." He finished his eggs and wiped the corner of his mouth with a napkin, a gesture so precise she felt the sting of it. He stood, and in the simple act of straightening, he restored gravity to a room that hadn't realized it was tilted. "Take the envelope," he said, "or don't. But if you don't, answer me this. Are you saying no to me, or to the person you love who needs the medicine you will pretend you can afford without help?" Anger rose hot and stupid in her throat. It felt like being 13 again, and realizing the world wasn't a test you could study for. "You don't get to talk about my mother." "Then talk," he said, and somehow it didn't sound like an order. "Say no if no is true. Tell me it won't help. Say you'd rather bleed than owe me blood." The envelope's edges pressed into the napkin dispenser. Her hands shook and she told herself it was coffee. "I don't like being bought," she said. "You aren't," he replied. "You were already priceless. I'm negotiating with gravity." She hated that his words found the place where she kept reasons. She hated that he spoke like a man who had listened more than he confessed. She hated that he stood there in a diner that smelled like bacon and bills, and made the word choice feel like a cliff with a view. She slid the envelope into the pocket of an apron that had never held more than change. He nodded once, the exact degree between thank you and of course. "I won't ask what you decide with it. I don't need to know." He left the cash for his meal, more than anyone decent would. He lifted his hand to Manny, and somehow it came across as respect rather than threat. At the door, he paused and turned slightly toward Lauren. "When you use that phone," he said, "use it as if you only get to once." He left. The bell above the door dared to jingle, and then thought better of it. After the car pulled into the river of traffic, the world rebooted. The diner resumed its small, brave business of feeding the tired. Manny tapped the envelope with a spoon. "I'm not your father," he said, "but if I were, I'd say, medicine first, principles later." She managed a laugh that didn't embarrass her. "If you were my father, you'd have worse jokes." He grinned. "Use it, kid. Don't make me tell your mother on you." She did not open the envelope until midnight. She counted the bills once, then not all the way the second time, and then she stopped counting because sometimes numbers turn into decisions and she wanted this one to turn into breath. When she finally slept, she dreamed of a locket with nothing inside, of windows that turned the city into a chessboard, of a name that sounded like a question that didn't exist before it was asked. At 2:14 a.m., the second phone vibrated against her nightstand. One word lit the screen. Downstairs. She didn't answer. She looked through the peephole and saw only the damp glow of hallway light. No footsteps, no shadows, only the light that all cheap buildings share. She texted, "Who is this?" 3 dots. Then, "You left your umbrella at the diner. Also, you don't own one. Bring the phone." She stared down at herself, sweatshirt, socks with a hole, a girl who had run out of decent pajamas when she was 19. She told herself she didn't have to go. She told herself the elevator could be broken. She told herself 100 things, and then she grabbed a coat. Outside, the city had turned itself back up. The rain was lighter, the reflections less sharp. A car idled at the curb and the passenger door opened without a person attached to it. 2 breaths later, Adrian Cavani was a presence again, the interior lit by the dash's glow like a confession told in low light. She slid in. He didn't look surprised. "You could have knocked," she said. "You could have asked me to," he replied. "I didn't invite you." "You called," he said quietly, "by keeping the phone on." She wanted to resent him for being right. She wanted to resent herself more. He pulled a small envelope from his jacket. Not money thick. Thought thin. He turned it in his fingers, the way men did when the thing inside mattered more than it should. "People I trusted are moving pieces I didn't place," he said. "The case was meant for someone else. It reached you. That changes the language of the board." "I don't play," she said. "Not your game." "You don't have to," he said. "But people who do will move around you anyway." "What's in the envelope?" He placed it in her palm, and her skin remembered his temperature. She opened it to find a photograph, 4x6, glossy. A woman stood in profile on a club balcony, dark hair in an immaculate twist, the kind of dress that made the room expensive. On her wrist, a bracelet glinting like a promise. Around her throat, a locket like the one in the case. The caption, scrawled in a hand that didn't do mess, Harbor Club. Friday, 11:40 p.m. "That's the woman who lied," he said. "She used to wear another name. Now she wears this one. What do you want me to do with this?" "Hold it," he said, "until you feel the weight of it. Then tell me what you think of it." She stared at the woman, at the locket like a dare, at the skyline behind her that chose which lives it gave back. "I think," Lauren said slowly, "that anyone who looks like this in a place like that has never stood in a pharmacy and calculated whether the pill you cut in half still works." His mouth didn't move, but the atmosphere of him did. "You don't look like a girl who cuts pills." "That's the point," she said. "None of us look like what we do when no one sees." They sat in a silence that didn't feel like a fight. The car's hum was a low, consenting sound. The city's hum was a louder one that didn't care. He turned. The movement was small. The effect was not. "If I ask you to come with me Friday," he said, "and see something with your own eyes, will you say yes?" "No." A pause, not offended, interested. "Why?" "Because you didn't say, please." A beat, and then an almost smile that didn't reach the careful places. "Please." "Yes," she said, before her caution could edit the truth. He nodded once, approval without triumph. "Wear black. And remember, if you break forward." She stepped back into the wet and watched the car become absence. In the window of the bodega across the street, her reflection looked like someone in a story told in third person to people who paid for happy endings and still cried when they earned them. She closed her hand around the envelope, the photograph bending against her fingers. On the back, in small neat script, someone had written a second line. 2 words that didn't belong to Adrian's hand. Trust nobody. She felt eyes from the end of the block, patient eyes, not hungry. The shape by the lamppost had been there too long. She pretended she hadn't noticed, keyed into her building, and told herself doors still meant safety. They did, until they didn't. What kind of night ends with a picture in your pocket and a warning written by a ghost you haven't met yet? The Harbor Club lived above the Hudson like a shark, a glass smile with velvet teeth. On Friday, when Lauren stood across the street in a dress she couldn't afford, the city felt like it had invited her to a dance she didn't know the steps to. She'd done her hair in her mirror with 3 bobby pins and hope. She'd taken the envelope out twice and put it back twice. She'd told her mother she had a late shift. She told herself she had a choice. The black car found her the way raindrops found windows. Inevitable, gentle, easily. The door opened, and there he was again in the kind of suit that made the night hurry out of his way. A tattoo curled just above his cuff, the stroke of ink startling against the white of a shirt that cost a week of her life. "You clean up like trouble," he said. She snorted softly, and the sound surprised them both. "That's supposed to be a compliment. That's supposed to be an answer?" He offered his hand to steady her into the car. She didn't take it and somehow still felt steadier. Inside, the case sat on the seat like a pet the city had domesticated. He lifted it by its handle as if it weighed a regular amount. "Tonight," he said, "you observe. You answer only when I tell you to. If someone asks who you are, you tell them the truth." "Which is?" "A waitress," he said. "People who underestimate you tell you exactly what you need to survive them." They entered through a side corridor that smelled like lemons and secrets. The elevator required 2 keys and a muscle in someone's jaw. The club opened on a room that believed in red velvet, red glass, red laughter at the edges of dark tables, where men pretended to be bored and women pretended not to notice. Adrian moved through it like he had paid for the paint on the walls. Heads turned the way birds do when gravity changes. Lauren walked half a step behind, eyes cataloging details exactly like he wanted. Who looked at the case, who looked at her, who looked too carefully at nothing. On the balcony, the skyline made a promise it had no intention of keeping. The woman from the photograph stood where the caption said she would. In person, she looked sharper. The locket winked at the city's teeth. 2 men leaned in to hear her and then leaned back as if what she said had heat in it. Adrian's voice left his mouth without raising. "Name." "Ariana Voss," Lauren murmured, "also known as whoever she needs to be to leave a room with what she came for. Her dress says old money, her posture says new teeth." He didn't look at her, but the air near his jaw felt like approval. "Good." Ariana turned as if she'd heard them through bulletproof glass. Her smile had edges built into it at the factory. When her gaze landed on Adrian, surprise painted itself across her face like an expensive blush. "You," she said. "I heard you drowned. I come up for air on Fridays," he said, "and you brought a date." Ariana's eyes slid to Lauren, weighed her, and tried to find smallness to stand on. "Sweet. Charity work looks good on you, Adrian." "Don't cheapen charity," he said. "It's the only honest business left." She tilted her head, the locket catching the city lights like a knife catching sun. "Is that mine?" she asked, and for a heartbeat Lauren couldn't tell if she meant the case or his regard. "No," he said. "And yes." Ariana laughed, a diamond in a blender. "You do love your riddles." Adrian set the case on the balcony's marble. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. The room leaned closer. "Your message reached the wrong hands," he said. "Next time, make sure your courier knows the difference between a sidewalk and a stage." Ariana's mouth did nothing, which was the most it had done all night. Her gaze landed on Lauren again, and behind the beauty a calculation snapped to attention. "A waitress with decent taste in shoes," she said. "He collects exceptional strays, doesn't he?" Lauren's pulse hammered unhelpfully. She thought of Manny's spoon tapping envelopes and of the word please used like a key. She thought of the picture of Ariana receiving the locket she deserved and wondered if she'd ever forgotten any gift in her life. "Some strays belong to themselves," Lauren said, because sometimes the truth sounded like defiance when it was only oxygen. Ariana blinked once, surprised, then filed the information in a drawer labeled inconvenient. "What's in the case?" she asked Adrian. "What you left out," he said. "Open it," she purred. "No," he replied. She leaned forward, lips real enough to ruin smaller men. "Then what are we even doing on this balcony, Cavani?" He looked beyond her shoulder at the lights that understood him better than people did, deciding whether anyone deserves a second chance at honesty. Ariana laughed softly, and for a second it almost sounded like regret faking a dress code. "And do they?" "Rarely," he said. "But tonight is elastic." He turned to Lauren then, and the room dimmed. Not literally, but in the way crowds do when two people create a silence loud enough to hush them. "Take the case," he said. "Hold it." She did, and for an absurd heartbeat she expected electricity to leap up her arm. It was only weight. Money doesn't burn until somebody lights it. "Look at her," Adrian said, and Lauren did. "Now tell me if I'm wrong about what happens next." Lauren studied Ariana Voss's face like a map. Pride where fear should be, silk where skin should be, danger where apology should be. She'll accept forgiveness because she thinks it's a glass she can drink and then forget she held, Lauren said. She'll wear the locket tomorrow and tell herself that makes it history. And after that? Adrian's voice asked the distance between mercy and memory. "She'll sell you," Lauren said, before she could stop herself. "Not because she hates you, because she loves herself more." The quiet that followed drew blood from the night. Ariana's smile did not slip. It sharpened. "You brought a poet," she said. "How quaint." Adrian's gaze didn't leave Lauren's face. His control felt like a net over a storm. "Leave the city," he said to Ariana without turning. "Tonight, take the second chance that I don't give twice." Ariana's laugh choked on a sound it didn't expect. "Or what?" Adrian didn't answer. He didn't have to. Somewhere 2 floors down, a door opened that shouldn't. Somewhere 3 blocks away, a black car's engine learned a name it hadn't. Ariana lifted her chin, fingers touching the locket at her throat like a habit. "If I leave," she said, softer now, "who will wear this for you when they take your breath?" He turned to her then, and the city saw something it would talk about in whispers later. "No one wears anything for me," he said. "Not anymore." Ariana's eyes flashed. Not hurt, not anger. Recognition. "Then you finally learned." "I had a teacher," he said. "She was expensive. She didn't make a profit." Ariana glanced at Lauren one last time, and for the shortest breath, sorrow flickered in that glance like a signal at sea. Then she was gone, the red of the room closing over the place where she'd stood. Adrian looked at the case and then at Lauren. "Walk," he said. They stepped back through the rooms and down through the lemon and secret hallway. In the car, he set the case on the floor like a dog that knew how to heel. "What did I just do?" Lauren asked, the first tremor finally catching up with her voice. "You asked a question," he said. "Most people prefer the certainty of a lie." He looked tired then, a word that didn't suit him. He loosened his tie an inch, and that 1 inch felt like a confession he hadn't intended to make. "You were right," he added. "About her? About loving herself more." They passed the river, a long, dark promise. He didn't speak again until they were blocks from her building. "Take the weekend off," he said. "I work weekends." "You did," he said. "Now you don't." "I can't afford." "You can't afford to be where they expect you to be when they come." "Who's they?" "People who don't like second chances," he said, "and people who will misread what you are until it's too late." She stared at him. "What am I?" He studied the traffic light paint her face green, then gold. "An inconvenient compass." She almost laughed. She almost cried. She did neither. "What happens now?" "Someone I trusted won't sleep," he said. "And someone who wanted the case to reach them will realize it reached you first." The car rolled to a stop in the alley behind her building. He didn't put a hand on her arm. He didn't look away when she looked. "If anything feels wrong," he said, "it isn't a feeling." She opened the door on air that smelled like old beer and last week. "Thank you," she said, because sometimes the right thing tasted strange. He dipped his chin once. When she shut the door, she saw his eyes in the glass, and for the first time, the steel looked breakable. She took the first step toward the back entrance and froze. A sound that did not belong reached her. Floorboards 2 flights up. A door catching on a chain. A small, careful exhale. Her voice turned paper thin. "Mister." Cavani. By the time she turned, he was already out of the car. He didn't ask what she'd heard. He lifted his hand, and the alley filled with men who had been air 10 seconds ago. One went for the front, one melted into the basement. Adrian took the stairs as if they belonged to him. Lauren followed because not following felt like screaming in a church. On the second floor, her door was open 4 inches wider than she left it. The chain hung snapped, as if embarrassed. Inside, the shape of a man who didn't expect company. Adrian didn't shout. He didn't warn. He stepped into the room and the world tried hard to make a sound. The shape moved for the window, but the night was too small to hold him. He met the frame. He met the floor. He met 2 men who became gravity officers without paperwork. Lauren pressed her back against the hallway paint and tasted metal. Adrian looked at the kitchen table where her life fit. 3 envelopes addressed in red, a mug with a chip, the photograph of Ariana Voss face down. He picked it up. He looked at it. He looked at Lauren. "Pack a bag," he said. "Now." She didn't ask why. She grabbed what she could carry and left behind what she couldn't, which included who she had been Thursday morning. In the alley, he opened the car door. On the seat, the case waited like a dog that wanted to be better. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere I never take anyone," he said. "And why me?" He held the door for her, and for the first time it felt like courtesy rather than control. "Because you still tell the truth when it hurts," he said. "And because someone who hates me knows your name now, and that makes you my problem." He closed the door with a sound that meant the night had reached the part of the story where alarms don't help. The car moved like a secret toward a destination she didn't have the language for yet. What kind of safety begins with a broken chain and a man who calls you a problem like a promise? The property sat beyond the Palisades where New Jersey pretended to be quiet. The drive wound through pines that knew how to keep a confidence. The house was all shadowed stone and ink-black glass, modern without the arrogance, guarded without the theater. No statues, no fountain. Just a door that didn't invite anyone. Inside, warmth rolled forward like a dog too big to jump, but trying. The foyer didn't gloat. The living room let the view do the work. River a dark ribbon, city an electric crown beyond. Art on the walls failed to declare itself. Everything felt deliberate. Nothing felt loud. "Guest room," Adrian said, walking as if the floor approved of him. "Lock from the inside. Alarm beyond that. If you need the night to be louder, tell the wall." She stood with her bag clutched like a child on the first night at a strange house. "Do you ever sleep?" "Always," he said. "And never." "Helpful." He almost smiled. "Kitchen's through there. The coffee remembers instructions. The fridge is cruelly healthy." "Do you ever eat pancakes?" "Only when I make them badly," he said. "Which is always." He showed her the room. The bed too big for a girl from a walk-up. The bathroom too glossy for the same. A window that let in river breath. On the nightstand, a charger plugged into an outlet like a welcome you could touch. "If you need anything, knock," he said. She nodded. He turned to leave and she blurted, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not asking me to be someone else," she said. He paused, then gave the slightest tilt of his head. "You're welcome." The door closed. The house hummed like a playlist set to comfort. She put her bag on the chair and her phone on the charger and her hands on the window. The river remained a better answer than most men. In the kitchen, she found the coffee machine's buttons and then found almond milk, and then found a note on the counter in handwriting that didn't belong to him. "Don't let him pretend he doesn't like sugar. He takes one." The signature was a small line drawing of a bee. "Who else lives here?" She asked the empty room. "Men with keys and bad jokes," Adrian said from the doorway, too quietly to have startled her, and yet. He nodded at the note in her hand. "My grandmother," he said. "She thinks she lives everywhere I do." "She's sweet," Lauren said. "She's lethal," he said, and his affection sounded like worship wearing a knife. He took the mug she had poured for him without asking, and yes, 1 sugar. He sipped. He closed his eyes for a second longer than a man like him should. "I need you to do something," he said finally. "Am I employed?" It came out lighter than she felt. "You're consulted," he said. There's a difference. She lifted a brow. Which pays more? The one that keeps you alive, he said. He laid the case on the island and opened it. The money rested like obedient soldiers. He lifted a stack, and beneath it, paper. Not ordinary, not letterhead, not anything a layperson would recognize until someone explained it in a courtroom. Ledgers, he said, real ones, the kind people die to keep burnable. He spread 3 pages side by side, columns and numbers and names coded as colors. He handed her a pen. Circle the pattern. I'm a waitress, she said. You're observant, he countered, and not attached to the idea that you know what you're looking for. She studied the pages like they were a city map. The numbers behaved and then misbehaved. Names turned into letters that repeated themselves on different lines at inconsistent intervals. A color recurred every 8 entries, then every 5, then every 3. She circled the offbeats. This color, she said, tapping a square. It's not random. It sings wrong in a pattern that doesn't match yours. He watched her hand, not her eyes. Why mine? Because you don't hum out of key, she said. Not even when you're wrong. He nodded quite slowly. The color is a person, he said. He recently developed an appetite. Let me guess, she said. He's someone you trusted. Was. Past tense helps. It names reality. He pulled another sheet and slid it over. Times, dates. Who was in the room when cash moved and why it shouldn't have. Circle the hours you think would make a person hungry. She circled the ones close to midnight. People lie more then. People tell the truth more then. People become themselves more then. He took the sheet back. He didn't smile. He looked like a man whose math had confirmed what his bones already knew. Good, he said. Now promise me something. No, she said automatically. Then softer. What? If I tell you to go, he said, go. Where? Out, away. Somewhere that doesn't remember your name. Is that even possible with you? It is when I decide it needs to be, he said. I won't play dead, she replied. I wouldn't ask, he said. I hate the theater. She opened her mouth, closed it, because now there were footsteps in the hallway that belonged to familiarity, not danger. A woman came into the kitchen with gray hair braided like crown work and eyes that had survived men, wars, and probably both at the same time. She wore a sweater the color of olive leaves and carried a woven basket of something that smelled like rosemary and apology. Nona, Adrian said, and there it was. The smallest shift. The careful man turned human with a single word. You shouldn't be here tonight. And you shouldn't be you, she said, kissing the air an inch from each cheek. We do what we must. Her eyes found Lauren and did not flinch at novelty. You're thinner than I like, she said. Do you like soup? Lauren looked at Adrian. He rolled his eyes at the ceiling and gave the tiniest nod. Answer yes or she'll feed you twice. Yes, Lauren said. Good, Nona said, triumphant at the inevitability of her being right. She unpacked soup and bread and the kind of cookies that tasted like a family never threw anything out except grudges. She told Lauren to sit. She told Adrian to eat before his organs forgot. She told the house to remember that love is a weapon, and the house agreed. In the kitchen warmth, dangerous men became boys who had grown tall, and Lauren felt something inside her unclench, the muscle that had held on since the chain broke. She ate and didn't hide that she needed it. Adrian ate and didn't hide that he knew it mattered. Tell me, Nona said to no one and everyone, who I should hate tonight. Ariana Voss, Lauren said before Adrian could speak. Ah, Nona said, as if the name were a spice she didn't keep in her cupboard. The one who thinks she invented mirrors. She left, Adrian said. Nona said. Did you ask her nicely or did you sharpen your consonants? I used verbs, he said. Nona patted his cheek. Good boy. When Nona finally left, taking her basket and her weather with her, the house felt larger again. Adrian leaned against the counter, sleeves pushed up, forearms marked with ink in lines that meant something in a language Lauren didn't speak yet. She likes you, he said, She likes feeding things that can't feed themselves yet, Lauren said. That's what I said. He cleaned dishes like a man who had learned chores as a geography lesson. If you don't know where things go, you don't belong. She dried. The guise of normal, 2 people at a sink, felt like a rebellion bigger than the case on the island. He glanced at the clock like it had wronged him. I have to meet a man I used to call a friend, he said. Do you trust him? No. Then why meet him? Because I am going to stop trusting him to be anything but the thing he became, he said, and because there are kinds of betrayal you only correct in person. His phone buzzed, a single word on the screen. Now. He looked at Lauren, at the room that had become a kind of ceasefire. Stay, he said. And if I don't? Then don't touch the case, he said. Not because it'll explode, because it will make you heavier than you want to be. He left with a coat that didn't need zipping. The house exhaled. The window pressed its forehead against the night and said, Wait with me. Lauren wandered because standing still felt like weakness, and because she wanted to know what a man like him kept in rooms without cameras. She found a piano with its lid up as if someone had only paused and never returned. She touched a key and it answered in a note so soft it felt like repeating after her. In the study, photographs lined a shelf. Black and white, square-edged, some blurred with motion. A girl with a gap-toothed grin, her hair in a ribbon. A boy with scraped knuckles holding a paper boat. A woman whose eyes laughed and whose arm had a tattoo of a bee. She realized then what the small drawing on the note had been. On the desk, a worn leather notebook, the kind people use when they believe paper still deserves secrets. The first page had one sentence. If I break forward. Her breath caught. He had said those words to her like they were something he'd invented for the night. They were old. They were a vow. Her phone vibrated with a text from Manny. You alive, kid? She smiled at the screen in a room that wasn't hers and typed back, Define alive. His reply came with a picture of a stack of pancakes shaped like a heart. We miss your bad coffee. She put the phone down with a laugh she didn't expect. Another vibration. Different phone. The second one. One word. Run. No contact name. No origin listed. The blood left her hands. Adrian? She said to the empty house, which is the same as praying if you aim it right. The lights didn't flicker. The walls didn't answer. She lifted the second phone to call back and the screen froze, then died. She plugged it into a charger just to have something to do with the fear, and the charger did nothing. Her own phone buzzed. A new message from a number that didn't exist. Door. She listened. Then she heard it, the smallest sound at the back entrance, like a key learning a lock for the first time. Across the room, the case sat like a judgment. She thought of his voice. If I tell you to go, go. She thought of her mother's. Character is what you do when no one sees. She thought of Nona's. Who should I hate tonight? She crossed the kitchen in 6 controlled steps and lifted the case in both hands, surprised again by what weight felt like when it was concentrated and honest. She carried it into the study, bent, and slid it under the desk, back against the wall. She grabbed the nearest weapon that wasn't, a fire extinguisher, and took one breath so deep it hurt. The back door opened the way guilt does, quiet, definitive, certain of its right to enter. How many ways can a life become a hallway between a voice that said stay and a message that said run? Footsteps on stone. One set. Not hesitant, not loud. The kind made by men who had learned to place weight without sound. Lauren's heartbeat found the oldest drum. She flattened herself against the study's wall and remembered what Nona had said. Love is a weapon. So is surprise. A shadow touched the doorway before the man did. He was lean, expensive, late 30s, the kind of handsome that gets people promoted beyond their competence. His hair gleamed. His shoes didn't dare scuff. In his left hand, a knife that belonged in a different century. In his right, a canvas bag the size of a life. He swept the room with his eyes, fast, thorough, the way searchlights do. Those eyes landed on the desk, slid under it, and skated past the dark shape hidden in shadow. He stepped to the bookshelf like a man stepping to an appointment and pulled a title off the second shelf with the ease of someone who had rehearsed. Something in the wall clicked. The painting of a harbor at dawn swung outward an inch. A wall safe. He smiled with his mouth only. "You always keep a copy," he said to the empty room as if it had ears. "It's your flaw." He pressed his palm to the steel pad. The safe clicked again, a small betrayal of a very big trust. He opened it and reached in. Paper came out. Not money, not ledgers. A thin stack of photographs bound with twine. He flipped through them with a speed that said greed, but a care that said fear. Lauren stepped out before she had planned to, because there are moments when the plan is less alive than the person you refuse to become. "Looking for your reflection?" she asked. He turned and his handsome went to war. For half a second he looked impressed. "You must be the waitress," he said. "I didn't expect presents." "People say that when they expected me to be smaller," she replied. He laughed softly like a man practicing for a mirror. "You know, this whole Good Samaritan thing plays well. You keep it up. You could be mayor of a small moral town." "Who are you?" she asked, because it bought seconds and also because she wanted to know the name of a man who broke into a life like a locksmith. "Don't be disappointed," he said. "People always expect Judas to look like a worm. He never does." "So that's a yes," she said. "You're the friend." "We were children together," he said, and a shard of something real moved under the smug. "We learned to steal bread before we learned to choose the prayer for before or after." "You could apologize," she said. "I could," he agreed, "but then I'd have to mean it." He moved then, a step toward her that wasn't aggressive, only inevitable. She lifted the fire extinguisher. He stopped. "Brave," he said. "Foolish. Overrated." "What's in the bag?" she asked. He held it up like a magician. "The parts of his life he thinks he doesn't need. Men like him always throw away the wrong parts." "Then why steal them?" she asked. "Because I like to finish jobs properly." She felt it then, the weight of the case under the desk like a heartbeat through the floor. He watched her eyes and followed their betrayal. "There we are," he said softly. "Good girl." He moved toward the desk and she moved faster, swinging the extinguisher like a woman who has measured the distance between and decided nobody else will do the math. The canister met his forearm with a sound like a plan changing. He grunted, more annoyed than injured. The knife clattered to the rug and cut nothing but the thread holding the photographs. They spilled like secrets onto the floor and the top image faced the ceiling. A younger Adrian with another man, both smiling too hard, a third figure in the background, Ariana, watching with a locket 2 years too early. The intruder swore, and the word was small compared to what he meant. He lunged for the desk, and Lauren did the only thing she could think to do that wasn't wrong. She kicked the case hard. It slid deeper under the desk, too far for his reach, too heavy for a swoop. His smile broke. "Fine," he said, and his hands turned to fists. The first swing caught her shoulder and lit fireworks behind her ribs. She stumbled. The second swing didn't land because Adrian walked through the doorway like a verdict. No raised voice, no showmanship. A silence that felt like gravity deciding to increase. He didn't look at Lauren because he didn't need to see her to protect her. He saw the man, and the man saw he had been a child once, and this was not that day. "Dante," Adrian said, and the name filled the room with history. "I hoped it wasn't you." "I knew it was." "You hoped you were wrong for once," Dante said. "It's sweet. It doesn't suit you." "Put the bag down," Adrian said. "Come take it," Dante replied. They didn't move for 3 heartbeats. They shook the foundations with how still they stood. Then Dante did something small and huge. He looked at Lauren. Just a glance. Just enough to tell Adrian he had made a religion and Dante had found its child. Adrian stepped between before any more blasphemy could occur. The 2 men closed the distance with a speed that made the walls want to help. It wasn't cinematic, the way men pretend to fight when they know they're being watched. It was quick and mean and full of echoes. Dante moved like he'd learned to survive. Adrian moved like he'd learned to protect. Dante went for the knife and got a broken memory instead. Adrian went for his wrist and got the truth. Dante would not stop until someone else did it for him. They hit the desk. Papers, wood, passed. The case thudded against the wall. The photograph of Ariana skittered under the rug, the men breathing like they were borrowing the night's lungs. Lauren didn't remember stepping in. She only remembered that both men turned surprised to find her hand on the fire extinguisher again. She pressed the lever, and a blast of white chemical snow swallowed Dante's eyes and filled the room with a winter that might save spring. He swore, blind and coughing. Adrian moved once, twice, and then Dante stood with his hands behind him, wrists bit by the zip tie that had been in Adrian's pocket waiting for this very moment. He sank back against the desk, chest heaving, eyes furious with the indignity of being ended by a waitress and a safety device. "You think this changes anything?" Dante spat. "Yes," Adrian said. "It changes the distance between me and who I promised I'd never be again." Sirens approached. Not the cities, the houses, the sound of men who answer to loyalty more than salary. They filled the doorway with competence. "Take him," Adrian said. His voice had steel in it, but the edges were for himself. No theater, no headlines, no mistakes. They lifted Dante carefully, because care is a statement too. He passed Lauren, and for a second the chemical snow cleared from his eyes. "He'll forgive you until he can't," Dante said to her. She met his gaze and answered with the one thing he no longer recognized. "I don't ask permission to be forgiven." He laughed, a sound with broken glass in it. "Then you're perfect for him," he said. They took him. The room settled into after. The snow curled up the edges of furniture and learned the shape of the rug. Adrian leaned on the desk and exhaled everything he hadn't said. Lauren set the extinguisher down as if it were heavy with more than foam. "You okay?" she asked him, and it felt like the wrong question, and also the only one. He looked at her then fully, the control shut off like a faucet. "You should have run," he said, and for once there was no displeasure, only raw relief that stung like kindness. "You said if you tell me to go, go," she replied. "You didn't tell me." His mouth tilted in gratitude that wouldn't call itself that. "Next time I won't give you the choice." "Next time I won't listen," she said, and then the laugh they both failed to stop became the only human sound brave enough to live in a room that had just remembered violence. Nona arrived like weather again. She glanced at the mess, the snow, the marks on Lauren's shoulder, the cut on Adrian's lip he didn't know he had. She tisked, then did what grandmothers do when men try to be larger than their wounds. She pressed a clean cloth into Adrian's hand and a cookie into Lauren's. "Who should I hate tomorrow?" she asked. "Anyone who tells me to stop feeding them," Lauren said. "Good answer," Nona said, satisfied. They cleaned together because sometimes processing is made of water and towels. They returned the case to the island. Adrian locked it, and the finality felt less like secrecy and more like punctuation. He poured 2 fingers of something expensive that tasted like someone else's mistake. He handed one to Lauren. She didn't drink, and he didn't insist. He set his down. "I was going to tell you," he said, "about Dante, about Ariana, about why the case had to find someone who would call me even when she didn't want to." "You just did," she said. He looked at her as if the city had finally given him the one view he had paid enough for. "I owe you," he said. "I don't like owing people." "Then don't," she said. "Show me instead." "What?" "That you meant it when you said you're done with games," she said. "Tell the truth before it hurts, not after." He closed his eyes for a fraction, like a man tasting medicine and realizing it would save him. "I will," he said. In the far room, a soft vibration trembled the desk he had locked. He opened the drawer. The matte phone from the case lit up like a nightlight in a child's room. He pressed the answer key without greeting. A voice Lauren hadn't heard yet slid into the kitchen like a leak. Female. Cool. Too careful, to be honest. "Did you enjoy your snowstorm?" Ariana Voss asked. Lauren's eyes flew to Adrian's. He didn't look away from her as he replied. "You're late." "I always am," Ariana said. "It gives me time to see who's still there." "And what do you see?" Adrian asked. Pieces where they belong, she said. And one piece you forgot to remove. Lauren didn't feel cold. She became it. Adrian didn't move. He didn't need to for the room to know it was on the verge of a new shape. Ariana's voice tasted like the expensive part of fear. You brought a waitress into a war, she said. That's not like you. It is now, he said. Good, Ariana replied, and for the first time her tone carried something like sorrow, stripped of drama. Then you'll hear me when I say this isn't over. She hung up. The mat phone went dark. The river held its breath. Adrian looked at Lauren, and in that look an entire city's worth of choices lined up and waited to be counted. How many endings does it take before two people admit they're writing the same story? Morning came pretending nothing had happened, as it always does. The river uncoiled its fog. The city stacked its noises neatly. The house held its own council. Lauren woke to a stiffness in her shoulder that belonged to last night and to a smell of coffee that belonged to a new one. She found Adrian at the window with a mug and a face that had tried its best not to think about things before light. He turned, and there it was again, that brief thing that made him look like a man and not a rumor. Relief. You stayed, he said, as if he hadn't told her to. You have better coffee, she said. He almost smiled. We have to move, he said. Dante won't talk the way we need. Ariana will. But only if she believes the story ends with her name spelled correctly. You want to meet her. I want to make the space where a decision becomes permanent. They drove without escort because sometimes safety is quieter without witnesses. The city laid out its steel spine. The sun pretended to warm. They didn't speak for 6 lights. At the 7th, Lauren said, Are you going to ask me to choose? He took a breath and placed it carefully in the glove box. Yes, he said, but not for me. For you. At least you asked, she said. He parked where the city became its waterfront self, honest light on dishonest water. The old pier jutted into the river like a rib. Ariana stood at the end of it in a gray coat and a face that had decided to stop lying to itself for 20 minutes. Adrian walked beside Lauren, not in front. Ariana watched their distance like a mathematician. How romantic, she said. You brought her to push me in. If I push you, Adrian said, stopping 10 feet away, no one will see it. That's the difference between you and me. You always loved secrets more than crowds, Ariana said. That's what made you dangerous. What made me dangerous, he said, was believing anyone else wouldn't be. She looked at Lauren. Do you know he used to be sweet? Ariana asked. I know he is, Lauren said. Ariana laughed once, surprised somewhere real. Maybe, she said. Once, before he learned the house always wins. I broke the house, Adrian said. You own the house, she corrected. Not the same. Then let's sell it, Lauren said, because sometimes a waitress says the thing nobody else in the room is allowed to. Both of them looked at her, both for different reasons. Ariana blinked. He doesn't sell, she said. He gives away when he's finished, Lauren said. I saw the shelf where he keeps the people he used to be. Ariana's eyes softened into something that had real past in it. If you keep this one, she said to Adrian, you'll have to stop pretending to hate yourself for wanting something that doesn't have a price tag. Silence leapt the small distance between them and made it bearable. Adrian spoke to the river because sometimes it's easier to tell the truth to a body that can't repeat it. You took money meant for children, he said. Ariana's breath hitched. I took revenge, she said, on men who turned grief into a place to hide sins. Not me, he said. Not you, she agreed. But your people, your house, your rules when you were busy being broken. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the armor had shifted enough for a more human shape to breathe. I kept the locket, she said, fingers touching her throat, because it was the only promise I didn't buy. Give it back, he said. She unclasped it, and in the small sound of chain releasing a world-changed tense, she held it out to Lauren, not to him. To the person who looks at things and sees what they are, she said. Lauren took the locket. It had weight, like all symbols do. She closed her hand around it and didn't open it. "What now?" Ariana asked, unexpectedly small on a very large pier. "Now you go," Adrian said. "For good, and you leave a map behind with all the treasure you stole marked with red X's." Ariana nodded, and the movement had grace in it that wasn't learned. "And if I don't?" "Then I stop being sweet," he said, and there was no threat in it, only fact. She smiled, a real sad thing. "You chose a lioness," she said, nodding toward Lauren. "For once in your life you chose right." She left. Not dramatically, not loudly. Boots on wood, coat and wind, the kind of exit that feels like an apology without the word. The river let her go without taking anything else. They stood on the pier long enough for the sun to remember how to be useful. Adrian turned to Lauren at last, and the city lost its power for a second because the thing between them finally mattered more. "You could have walked away a dozen times," he said. "You didn't." "I thought about it," she said. "I didn't want you in this," he said. "I put myself in it," she replied. "That's different." "I told you to go," he said. "You told me to break," she corrected quietly. "You just didn't expect me to know how." He smiled then, slow and unguarded, the way men used to before they learned women had to earn them. "Stay," he said. "You have a way of making that sound like survive," she said. "Both," he said, "with me." She had expected a speech. She had expected terms. She had expected a name for the thing that felt like a future. Instead, she got him. The difficult, precise, infuriating man with a grandmother who left notes and a house that kept secrets and a vow written on paper and in habits. She took the locket from her palm and pressed it into his. "For the shelf," she said. "For the person you'll never be again." He closed his fingers around it, and she watched a muscle in his jaw find a new job. "Partners," he said, the word natural on his mouth. "Partners," she repeated, and the sound of it tasted like coffee and peace. He kissed her then, not because the story required it, but because the story had earned it. It wasn't cinematic. It was honest. It was a promise in a language both of them could finally hear. The city went on pretending it wasn't watching. The river pretended it wasn't reflecting. They left the pier not because the scene wanted to end, but because life had other rooms. Back at the house, Nonna had left another note. "I told the sauce you were coming. Don't let it be right without you." A pot simmered. Bread waited. The study, cleaned of snow and old plans, held light differently, as if it had decided to endorse mornings again. Adrian set the locket on the shelf between a photograph of a boy with a paper boat and a photograph of a woman with laughing eyes. It looked right there. It looked finished. They ate at the kitchen island because tables felt too formal. Lauren told him about the Bluebirds jukebox that only played Springsteen when it was raining, and he told her about stealing his first espresso cups and getting caught by a grandmother who loved him enough to make him return them one by one to every cafe. They didn't talk about Dante or Ariana or ledgers until the pasta was gone and the room had stabilized. His phone buzzed. A message. He read it, and the light in his eyes went sharp, then thoughtful. "Map delivered," he said. "Accounts identified. Children get their money back." "Good," she said simply, because sometimes the righteous thing deserves no garnish. He looked up at her across a surface that had seen fear and laughter in the same 15 hours. "Stay," he said again, this time the word meaning a door, a key, a set of drawers with her name on one, and a toothbrush that would not feel like trespassing. She nodded. "On one condition," she said. "Name it." "No more tests," she said. "No more wallets left like traps. No more games that teach you things you should learn by asking." He held her gaze for the count of the river under the window. "Done," he said. He reached across, and the way his hand closed over hers made the promise feel notarized by something larger than both of them. The doorbell rang. Both of them turned. Not fear, not yet. An alertness that didn't take from the warmth. Adrian stood and the house listened. He checked the monitor. He went still. "It's my past," he said. "Which chapter?" she asked, rising beside him. "The one that taught me the difference between owning a house and having a home." he said. He opened the door to a man who wore a suit badly and a badge well. The man took off his hat like people do in church. He looked at Adrian, then at Lauren, then passed them to the shelf where a locket had just learned to be still. "Mr. Cavani," the detective said, "we need to talk about a message someone sent me last night with your number on it." Adrian's eyes narrowed the way knights do when someone moves a piece that isn't on the board. "What message?" The detective held up a burner phone in a plastic bag. On the cracked screen, 3 words that looked like a throat clearing. "Debt paid. For now." The house inhaled. The river did too. Lauren's hand found the counter behind her, as if the granite could keep promises. Nana's sauce burbled, ridiculous and comforting. The city shone against the glass, pretending this was any other late morning. Adrian's face did that precise thing where it refused to become fear while it calculated how to guard what mattered. He stepped aside to let the detective in, and as the door swung wider, Lauren felt both truths at once. The story had earned a happy ending, and someone had just set a new question down between them like a chess clock, waiting for their move. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.